How are we doing, everybody? It is Ben Morgan of the Fins Up Network going behind enemy lines this week, week 11 against the Las Vegas Raiders. As you can see here, we've got Mitchell Renz of the Raiders Report brought to you by Chat Sports with us. First of all, Mitchell, thank you for joining us. You joined last year. I know that my audience really liked getting the insight from another team, and you did a great job presenting it. So first and foremost, thank you for joining. But second, we can speak of shared misery together, because right before we started this, we were just saying like, man, it's tough sledding right now. Our teams aren't looking too good. You made a comment about the Raiders potentially being one of, if not the worst teams in the NFL. I mean, talk about some shared misery right now.
Yeah, I mean, you say tough sledding, and I mean, we're trying to sled in June type of tough sledding. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like sledding in Miami. It's just one of those things where I think, like, just like the Dolphins, the Raiders fan base is one of the most diehard fan bases out there. And every year in the offseason, June, July, August, you like hype yourself up. You're like, this is going to be the year. You know what I mean? You're like, I can't wait to get it going. And then, it's the Raiders for example, starts off a little rocky against the Chargers, and then you beat the Baltimore Ravens, and you're going, holy shit, like, yeah, if we can beat the Ravens, I think we can almost beat anybody. You're 2-2 after you beat the Browns, and then you've lost 5 straight games, and it's just been a really, really rough one. We've had a lot of injuries on the defensive side of the football, and much like Miami, it's just the inability to really get the offense going. I am very intrigued to see what the offense looks like this week. Now that the Raiders fired Luke Getsy, they moved on from their quarterback coach, Rich Scangarillo, moved on from their offensive line coach, James Craig. And I kind of laugh or do a little bit of an eye roll, because in the real world, right, like if you were to hire people that have always failed or have been fired from their job and expect a different result, like I don't get it. Like Rich Scangarillo, the Raiders quarterback coach, this is his 6th straight job that he has been fired after 1 year. And they're like, that's the guy that I want. And I'm like, how the hell is that even happening, right?
How's that even
like Luke Getsy, I mean, he was a disaster in Chicago. And Gardner, don't get me wrong, is not the quarterback that anybody wants on their team. But the one cool part about Gardner is he's always had like that awkward, confident swagger. And I've never seen Gardner Minshew as unconfident as what he is right now. It kind of reminds me, I mean, people call him the guard dog. It kind of reminds me of like my dog Chuck when he pees in the corner. I see him. He knows that I see him. And the ears go down, the tail between the legs. I mean, shit, Gardner Minshew's picking his nose on the sidelines. I mean, it has not been a good year for Minshew at all. But it is what it is. I think at this point now, we're just kind of hoping for the best going forward. I'm very confident that we're going to get Shedeur Sanders next year. So we'll see what happens there. Yeah.
I did that back in 2019. Actually, even going back to like 2018, I was like, dude, we're in the market for a quarterback. I'm going to pick a couple of guys and just watch those guys college football games. So every week I recorded the Alabama football game. So being a Florida fan, I would watch the Florida game, but then like Saturday night, Sunday morning, I'd pop on the Alabama tape. So I watched basically like every one of Tua's games. I'm like, we're going to get this guy. So I was well prepared to get Tua, and especially when we got him. Mitch, I talked in the last video, not to dwell too much on your quarterback situation, but I always thought Gardner Minshew was that type of quarterback that you don't mind as a backup if your quarterback is only going to maybe like get hurt mid-game and you need someone to do some quick duty at the end, or maybe miss 1 or 2 games. Outside of that, you're asking for too much of this guy. He is the spark plug. He's not the reliable guy. Is that kind of how you view him as well?
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely been duty. There's no doubt about that. But I think Minshew's one of those dudes where like, and it's people know, and I think people are smart enough, especially a lot of people that watch shows on YouTube, right? Like, you're not going to get the surface level content that I think that you get on a lot of these like bigger, broader networks. Like the other day, I was listening to not him, Cowherd.
Colin Cowherd
talking about Christian Wilkins still being on the Dolphins, and I'm like, how the hell does that even happen, right? Like, that's embarrassing. I mean, like, come on, that's embarrassing. But like,
so
we also know exactly what Gardner Minshew is, and it's one of the reasons why I get kind of frustrated with these NFL head coaches, GMs, and they're like, so you're telling me, and the Raiders' plan was to go get Minshew early. They signed him on the exact same day they got Wilkins. And I get it. They wanted Jaden Daniels. They wanted Cliff Kingsbury, and that looks like that would have been successful. but you're also picking number 13. So to expect that you're going to get a guy going that high in the draft, I think is a little bit silly to do. But like you went out, you handpicked Minshew. You didn't give him a lot of money, but there's no way that you can look me confidently in the eyes and go, this is going to be the guy that helps us win football games. And Minshew was a Pro Bowler last season on a 7-6 Colts team. Like they had it rolling, they had some good mojo. But at the end of the day, man, I mean, you can't tell me that you want Gardner Minshew to be your quarterback. I mean, he is a rebound before you get with your wife. You know what I mean? Like that's what he is. That's what he is.
Well said. You've got your analogy game going strong today, Mitch. I'm proud of you. We're only like 6 minutes in, and you've already hit like 3 good ones. So well done.
I like to believe that that's why people watch the show at this point, because you're not watching it for 2-7 Raiders. I'll tell you that.
Well done. I want to talk about your defense a little bit because I did a preview video earlier in the week, and the Raiders defense, I got some stats going on the scroll. They are 30th, basically damn near last place in the NFL in points allowed per game. But it's funny because if you look at their defense, what is it here? They're 15th in total.
Their defense is good.
Game, 11th in passing yards per game. The rushing defense isn't quite as good, but the points that you're allowing per game and the yards that are accompanying that, they don't make sense. Help me make this make sense.
Turnovers. And that's been the Raiders' Achilles heel the entire season. Like if you're going to roll out quarterbacks like Aiden O'Connell, like Gardner Minshew, you need to play clean, turnover-free football. And you also need to be able to win the turnover battle. Like you have to be the team that's forcing turnovers. And last season, when Antonio Pierce took over, they were a team that they were forcing a lot of turnovers and they were playing solid defense. I'll admit they've lost a lot of guys on D. Like we were hoping to have Malcolm Kuntz, hoping to have Christian Wilkins, losing Marcus Epps, one of your captains there on the safety of the back end. Like those injuries hurt. This week, we're not going to have Nate Hobbs. He's doubtful, which is going to really suck going up against Jalen and Tyreek Hill. I mean, Hill's always feasted on the Raiders. He's 10-2 in his career against us. But it's turnovers. Like for somebody who's watched every single Raiders game, they give up a lot of points. Now they got worked against Cincinnati last week. They got whooped, and Mike McDaniel I think has always done a good job of trying to like scheme up a good running game. And the Raiders this past season with James Craig, he was on the offensive line coach for San Francisco, so he kind of comes from the same tree. They tried to run I think a similar system. It just did not work. But they can get exposed on the ground, especially if you're a physical team, because they just don't have the depth to be able to hang for 4 quarters of football. But like the points that they give up, it's because time and time again, the offense is going 3 and out. The offense can't sustain drives, or they're putting up horrible turnovers, and you're always in a bad spot. Like the thing that would frustrate me the most, and that's why I'm excited to see the new offensive coordinator, Scott Turner. The Raiders this season have the second best in terms of scoring on the first drive. If the Raiders come out like when they play, and that's why they get you every week, because they come out on that first drive and they scored on 80% of their drives, first drive of the season this year. After the first drive, they are dead last in the NFL in points per drive. And it's because Lou Getsy can't switch anything up. They just do the exact same thing over and over and over again. And you're going to see it. I mean, I hope that we don't see it. I hope that we get to see something a little bit more. But if there is one thing that I think Dolphins fans should be worried about, this is going to be one of those games where, I mean, even AP said it. We're 2-7. What do we have to lose? And it kind of reminds me of like when you see like a big like school in college football going up against a smaller school, and they're just pulling out every trick in the bag and they're just coming out swinging. That's what the Raiders are going to do in this game. The problem is I think they're going to come out swinging, and I think they're going to get hit with one. So we'll see, though.
Speaking of, there's a fight tonight. I want to chat to you about that either at the end of this video, or we can do it offline as well, depending on the time. But you talked about Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and what teams have been doing this year. I mean, obviously it's not the greatest sample size because Tua hasn't played all of the games. We haven't really seen the full offense really be able to click. But even when Tua's been in, they've been a little bit landlocked. The explosive plays aren't there like they were the last couple of years, and teams are figuring out, hey, if we press these guys at the line of scrimmage, if we keep safety help over the top, they're not going to be able to beat us. They're going to have to do these 7 to 10 play drives, whereas everyone likes that. You want to give your defense a rest, but this Dolphins offense clicks if you can get a 1, a 2, a 3 play drive here and there as well. Is that something that your cornerbacks, you talked about Hobbs potentially not missing this one. Is it finally time for a breakout game for Waddle and Hill? What are your predictions there?
I'll say this: the Raiders' second-year corner out of Maryland, his name's Jacorian Bennett. He's been the Raiders' best corner this season in terms of staying on the outside. He's done a great job of getting some PBUs. He runs a legit 4.3, 4.4, and I kind of want to see how he matches up against somebody like Waddle. I think Tyreek would give him a little bit more trouble because Jacorian's more straight line speed, where Tyreek's just a human joystick.
Yep.
But like the Raiders and Patrick Graham, and this is kind of why I'm interested to see this, develop, because I have two. I got Tyreek, I got Jalen in a lot of my fantasy leagues, and I feel like the one thing that they're not doing this year is, I want to say, almost like yards after the catch, where I felt like last season Tua got the ball out so quickly and he just let his guys be athletes and they got him in space, and they were able to make a lot of stuff happen. Yes, there was the deep balls as well.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing that the Raiders are going to do is they're going to give you that underneath route. Like Patrick Graham has always been somebody who bends but doesn't break. And if you can take advantage and if you can be patient to take that 4-yard gain, that 5-yard gain, the Raiders lead the NFL in missed tackles. So that's always led to 4, has led to 10 is basically what it seems like all year. But I've also watched Miami, and I feel like that they're not, like, they're always looking for the big play and they're just not taking the little one that's in front of them all the time. So if they try to force it, I mean, it could be a little bit more of a rough game, but I'd be lying to tell you that I have any confidence in the Raiders getting a win right now, which I'm sure you all can hear in my voice. But
right.
I would say Jalen's probably going to have a better matchup than Tyreek, but Tyreek, like I said, has feasted on the Raiders in his past.
Yeah, I can't help but think back to that game last year. And Miami made so many plays on those like 15 to 20-yard over routes where Tyreek Hill would just find that spot. And the defense is so far back because he comes shooting out of his stance as soon as or the exit cheat motion, he is going. You're gonna give him that cushion. He would come over the middle, you'd hit him for 15 and 20, and he would make plays after the catch. The Raiders was the perfect example on that touchdown he had, where there were 3 Raiders collapsing on him, and someone catching the ball, landing and going. That might have been the best example of pure speed that I have ever seen in my entire life. But that's just, like I said, it's been kind of missing.
Has Tyreek lost a step? You think because entering the year, I was asked who are the best wide receivers in the NFL, and I was like, without a doubt, it's Tyreek, Devontae Adams, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
I've watched a lot of Devontae. It's been a little bit more of hate watching recently, but I've been watching him. He's lost a step or two, and he's still a great receiver.
Yep.
I don't know if he's top 10. To me, though, does Tyreek Hill, I'll ask you this, does he deserve to be in that conversation of Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase? Because I think right now it's those 2 guys. And then there's a little bit of a tier break, but Tyreek's an unbelievable athlete. But to me, I do feel like Tyreek has lost, and even him losing a half step, but he's lost something, and I don't know what it is. Maybe he just needs to get arrested because that's the best game he's had.
Well, and that's maybe what it is too. Because if he's lost something, like you said, it is very microscopic, but maybe there's something there because he is dealing with some nagging injuries.
Wrist,
now he got the wrist, and like you said, the season couldn't have started out more wild. I remember week 1. I mean, who's not excited week 1, right? You have all the hope in the world, especially as a Dolphins fan this year. I get out of the shower and I look at my phone and it is just blowing up. I'm like, what the hell could have happened? And I get back out to the living room and I'm soaking wet out of the shower and I see Tyreek Hill in handcuffs. I'm like, oh, this season got out to a great start. But yeah, I mean, if he's lost a step, like you said, it's almost like guys like Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, just because their offenses are struggling a little bit, they're not looking as good. I still put those kind of guys in that top tier. But right now, like you said, if you have to almost tier them, you almost have to drop them down a little bit because what Justin Jefferson is doing with Sam Darnold and what Jamar Chase has been able to do this year, it's just phenomenal. So, yeah, I mean, Tyreek's going to have a bounce back after being named by his peers as the top player in the NFL. If you ended the season today, I'd be curious to see where they voted him because right now he's not going to crack that top 10, 15, hell, maybe 20. I mean, he's still going to get the respect just because of what he's done consistency wise. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to put your finger on just one thing. There is a guy on your offense that I want to talk about because I would say it's unquestioned your top weapon, especially with Adams being dealt. Brock Bowers. He leads all NFL tight ends in receiving yards. And it's crazy that he's doing that because it's not like the Raiders really have all these other guys that defenses need to key on. How and tight end is a tough position to come in as a rookie and succeed. How we all liked Brock Bowers as a draft prospect, right? But how is he having this much success considering how lack of success the Raiders offense is having?
He's the best tight end in the NFL, and I'm not afraid to say it. And people might roll their eyes at that statement, but all I ask is this: watch him play, and you're going to get to see him play a little bit today. And I think it kind of goes back to be honest with you, like I've seen Brock Bowers in person, and he kind of just reminds you of a dude where you're like, you can't really realize how big, how broad, how unbelievably gifted he truly is until you see it in person. And I get it. He looks like somebody that can do your taxes, right, Ben? Like he looks like you. Imagine you doing everything that Brock Bowers is doing, right? Like,
agreed. I can't. I just never got a chance. I mean,
I get it. Believe me, you come off as the high school coach that never gave me a chance type of guy. I know a bunch of them. But like, he looks like a guy that can do your taxes. But like, let's be honest here. If I can remember a few years ago when there was a lot of reports coming out about Darren Waller looking like an alien, and Darren Waller this and that. And Darren Waller was unbelievable. Brock Bowers is much better of an athlete than what Darren Waller is. But what makes Bowers so special is what usually when tight ends struggle coming into that first year, it's the inability to block. It's the inability to just be a tight end in the National Football League. Because in college, you know, when you're that good as an athlete, you're going to be able to probably take on some of those linebackers, corners, whoever. What makes Bowers a nightmare and the reason why he's been the focal point, and like I would love to see what he could do if he had a good offense, a good quarterback. I mean, he's putting up the numbers that he is, 557 catches, 580 yards, which doesn't 580 yards leads all tight ends. 57 is only behind Travis Kelce. But I'm not kidding you. If you put Brock Bowers in that Andy Reid offense with Patrick Mahomes, I think he's probably got 70 catches. He's probably got 800, 900 yards, and he's probably got 5 or 6 touchdowns. But like his speed, his acceleration, when he catches the ball, it's kind of Tyreek-like where it doesn't make sense how somebody can be stopped and then full speed. And it hits you like a ton of bricks, but it's also his ability to block where he can line up at a tight end. He can chip you, get out, and he can get out quick. They line him up as like an H-back where you kind of see like the Niners do this a little bit with Kyle Juszczyk. And they use him at wide receiver, X, Y, slot. They put him out at tight end, and he can go up against a linebacker. He gets double teamed all the time, safeties, corner. You don't realize how good he is, I think, until you actually see it. To me, he's Luka Doncic of the NFL, where you look at Luka and you're like, he was just slinging beers in the back of the locker room, but he's going to drop 35 on you. And people always say, oh, Luka don't look like this guy, but he's just so physically gifted and just he's just that dude. And when people watch the Raiders, you need to watch Brock Bowers because he's going to go down in the history books, and he's got to get a better offense. I get it, but he's special enough to where we talk about him the same way we talk about Rob Gronkowski, the way we talk about a George Kittle, a Travis Kelce, a Tony Gonzalez, and Antonio Gates. Like that's really truly how special he is. And he's fun to watch, man. He is must watch, but it also doesn't surprise me because he was also the best player at Georgia for 3 years. And that was one of the best college football teams in the country.
No, absolutely. Was it Rob Gronkowski that he stood next to at like the combine or something, but pre-draft, and everyone's like, yo, Brock Bowers is unquestioned tight end 1 in this draft. He's still obviously going to go first round, but he shouldn't have stood next to Rob Gronkowski because, like you said, it's like,
dude, I'll say this,
like standing next to Brock Bowers. That's what it looked like. It's like, what the hell? This guy he doesn't look the part, but holy cow, he has impressed.
Again, Gronk is a gigantic human being, but the actual tight end that he reminds me of. Now, I've like thrown out comps before. He's a better athlete than George Kittle. Like, I think you're going to see Bowers be a better version of Kittle, where somebody who can run, he can just plow people over. But he's also the athlete of like, and he's Aaron Hernandez without the murder. Like, I mean, that's what he is from an athletic standpoint. Of he's just that truly gifted, and then you pair it with the fact that he loves football and just eats, breathes it. And, you know, the Raiders need as many of those guys as they can because we got Crosby. It's just finding somebody else that matches that on the offensive side of the football.
For sure. No, he's a good guy to build around. I like the idea of building from the inside out, and you have a nice piece there. Not that he's necessarily an inside type of guy, but a tight end is a position that you can get a lot of mileage out, and getting him at what's he, 21, 22. I think you're in pretty good shape at the tight end position, especially you got
Hopefully.
Michael Mayer as well, who was
I love Mayer.
Second round the year before. I talked in the last video actually about how confused I was on draft day, because I understand the idea. Take best player available. It's going to get you pretty far in the NFL. But when you took a tight end with the first pick in the second round the year before, that was a little bit of a head scratcher, because while I like best player available, I like the idea of incorporating like a hybrid method where you got to hit a little bit of differential of positions as well. I mean, if you want to hit on that, you can. Otherwise, I drove it home last time as well.
I think a lot of people, including myself, it was a bit of a head scratcher just because the Raiders needed a corner. You needed an offensive tackle. And we kind of passed on Talisi Fuanga. It's kind of the guy that I was hoping that the Raiders were able to get. But at the end of the day, though, like as a Raider fan, you can't be mad that you got Bowers. And I think the coaching staff really has got to figure out a way. And I think that you're going to see it a little bit this week. They've been talking a lot about doing a lot of 12 personnel. So 2 tight end sets, 2 wide receivers on the outside. And I'm hoping that you're going to be able to get to see it this week with Mayer. Now, Mayer hasn't played since week 3. He's been out due to personal reasons, which sounds like he's all good to go. He was at the facility last week on their bye week, and he was good to rid of the rock. But I think Mayer also is a really talented tight end. I mean, he was my number 1 tight end prospect the year before. But just from what it sounds like, the Rams tried to trade up with the Raiders at 13. They tried to get Brock Bowers, but the Raiders said no to it, and like they want to go get him. To me, though, like I just think that there's certain head coaches that are playing chess, and a lot of other guys are playing checkers. And I love Sean McVay. I think he's one of the best in the biz. And to me, if Sean McVay is willing to go up from 19 to 13 to go get Bowers, I'm like, like we did the right thing, and it's showing that we made the right pick.
Yeah, you're not going to be mad. Put it this way. You're not going to be mad getting an exciting player like that. That's going to be
especially because the Raiders haven't been able to draft anyone in the first round. I mean, you go back and Tyree Wilson, I mean, he's been better, but Tyree's not going to be worth a first round pick. Then, the year before that was the Devontae trade. All right, cool. Alex Leatherwood, I don't even think he's in the league anymore. David Arnett's selling cocaine in Las Vegas and meth. Henry Ruggs is in jail. Jonathan Abrams not in the league anymore. Jacobs is on the Packers. Cleveland Ferrell, God knows where he is. I mean, that's bad. That's a bad list I just went through.
Take Bowers, enjoy Bowers. Don't worry about those other guys. Mitch, Dolphins fans would be mad at me if I didn't bring this name up. You mentioned him briefly earlier, but what was I know you got a little bit of a limited sample size, but the Raiders, one of their splash moves, obviously, this offseason, 5-year, $110 million contract to former Miami Dolphins player, a fan favorite, I should add. The dude was awesome to watch. Christian Wilkins, what has been your take in the limited sample size that you've been able to get from Wilkins so far from the Raiders?
Wilkins was my number 1 player that I wanted Las Vegas to sign in the offseason. And I wanted him to sign with the Raiders because I'm good friends with one of the defensive players for the Raiders. And they were kind of telling me, like, this is the guy we want to go out and get. Because in today's day and age in the NFL, I think you're seeing a lot of these players, honestly, in professional sports now. Like, I can't even watch the NBA because all these star players that are sitting out. And like, you're seeing it time and time again. And I get it. Like, people are like, oh, well, we want to be healthy for the playoffs. Sure. But it's still like your job to show up every week. This is an entertainment business and you're getting paid life-changing money for you and future generations. So like, do your job. The thing that I loved about Wilkins was there was no doubt in my mind that he was going to show up every single day, give you 110%. Guy loves football, amazing person to be around. He's the big teddy bear that you're hoping that you find like in a friend where, like you go out, like for me, I'm not a big guy. I'm 5'10", I'm 190 pounds. I'm not going to try to get into a fight with anyone. Nope. But I know if I got Wilkins standing next to me, I might feel 210. You know what I'm saying? Like, And Wilkins is that guy on the interior where he had a hell of a year last season. He had like 9.5 sacks, career high. And he's not going to light up the box score for you usually, but he just makes everybody else around you so much better. And to me, I used to kind of almost call him like the point guard of the defensive line where he might only get you 11, 12 points, but he's going to get you 8 or 9 boards, and he's probably going to get you 12 assists because he's opening things up for Crosby, Adam Butler. But for Wilkins, I liked him so much because I love Rob Leonard. He used to be one of y'all's coaches down in Miami. I think he's one of the best defensive line coaches in the NFL. And because they added Rob Leonard with Patrick Graham, who also used to work down there in Miami, who was a part of the regime, I believe, that drafted Wilkins in the first round.
Yep.
But then you add him with John Jenkins, with Adam Butler, guys that also spent some time down in Miami. And this Raiders defensive line, based on, again, I talked to one of the guys. He said it was like the closest defensive line group that they had. Yeah. And it's a shame that they couldn't get it going. But I am very confident in Wilkins, because when you love football and you're that talented, you're going to be able to figure out a way to make it work.
He was so fun to watch. I understand why Miami couldn't make it happen. I think all of us Dolphins fans, if you could just throw the salary cap aside, like if it was Madden, you'd find a way to make it work. It's still a big
deal. I mean, $27 million a year at the defensive tackle position. And again, Wilkins is a great player, but for a guy that's never made the Pro Bowl, the Raiders paid based on need, and they needed somebody like that. So I think that they went out and overpaid a little bit, but I'm okay with it.
It's kind of what you had to do. And if you think about it, go back to the offseason again, when you are 0-0 and everything is possible, and you still have the idea of, wait, we can still get one of these young quarterbacks as well. You get the idea, you get the opportunity to pair Maxx Crosby, who is, you'll agree, you've said great things about him in the past, one of the top edge rushers in the entire NFL. He gets it done rushing the passer, inside, outside, speed, power against the run. He does it all, right? I mean, we don't have to pound that one home anymore. But now you get to pair him with Christian Wilkins. Like, that was a scary defense. And going into this season, I was like, you know what? I think the Dolphins are probably a better team than the Raiders, but what a fun game that is going to be able to see our tackles and our offensive line that's struggled since Tua has been here against that defense. Like, that's going to be a hell of a matchup. And unfortunately, well, probably fortunately for Dolphins fans, but unfortunately for the sake of being able to watch the highest potential and quality of football, we're going to get kind of robbed of that. But man, you've got a fun one. There's nothing better than watching that dude mic'd up when he's going around to guys after a play and he's stealing a towel like it's a flag and throwing it. Dude, the guy's just full of life.
Like, if I'm a dad, right, and I get it, like there's maybe some stuff that you see like on fields, which, like, the number one thing that I hate right now, it's like in college football, where like somebody makes a big play and they're acting like they're shooting them with like emptying a clip or something like that. And I'm like, you want to go be a gangbanger? Like, I'm telling you this right now. I've talked to a lot of NFL scouts. I've talked to coaches on multiple NFL teams. One of my really good buddies from high school, he's one of the top scouts for the Buffalo Bills. I don't remember what that guy's name is who did that, but like, he's not even on their draft board because of the amount of players in today's day and age where it's like, all right, you want to be a gangbanger? Like, you want to go out and do like that type of shit? Like, go ahead and do it. Like, that's not what we want here with this football team. And I think when you see a guy like Wilkins, who's just out there, and he reminds me of the way, like, I played football. I never played like in high school or anything like that, but you play in your backyard with your friends, your family members, and you're just out there having a great time. That's Christian Wilkins at 6'4", 300 pounds, and he's just way better than everyone else. Like,
and he's good,
he's so good. Like, he's got the Mighty Morphin like shit going on, and I mean, we were calling him that he changed from a dolphin into a killer whale. But it was he just brings fun to the field, and if I was a dad, I would go watch that guy play football, the way he handles himself on and off the field. Like, you need more guys like that in your locker room.
Yeah, mimic your actions and the players that you're going after that. No, I 100% agree. Another player, a little bit kind of related to that, but a player that the Dolphins wanted in this 2024 NFL draft was Jackson Powers Johnson. I believe you guys have him playing guard. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
He's center now.
Yeah, we kind of projected him more as a center as well. I think the stats I saw, 6 starts, appeared in 7 games. How has he looked so far? Because that's one area where we as Dolphins fans get real sensitive, because Chris Greer, this front office, refuses to take first-round offensive linemen. And we're like, dude, if he's there, that's a position of need. He can play center. He can play guard. Why aren't you pulling the trigger? Obviously, we didn't. You reap the benefits. How has he looked so far?
Well, I know a lot of the concerns coming out of college on JPJ were like injuries, concussions, and that. And I mean, Power, like, he didn't practice literally like the entire off season. I mean, He was out May, June, July, August. I mean, the reason why he hasn't started every game is because they didn't feel comfortable putting him on the field the first few weeks because he just never practiced, right? Like it was like, what the hell's going on? Heard that he suffered a concussion and that, he was kind of out for a little bit. But Jackson Powers Johnson is everything that you want in a center. He's everything that you want in an offensive lineman. And he's a mauler, dude. Like I've met JPJ, his family, like his parents, like they are big time Raider fans. So like that was a really cool thing. And like they are like the family of like just really, really good people. And like you can see that Jackson is a really good kid as well. But like he also says the right things, right? Like he earlier in the offseason, he's like, I'm going to play for the team on the front. So that way they bless the name on the back. And Raider fans obviously ate that up. But when he goes out there, he's trying to kill you. Like he's trying to rip your head off. And, this is kind of a name that I don't know how Miami Dolphins fans feel about this guy, but like the mentality of Richie Incognito, but being like a good person off the field. You know what I mean? Like, and that's kind of how JPJ plays, where they were using him a little bit at guard because they signed Andre James to a 3-year deal, $24 million. And right. Andre was actually a player who was battling between the Dolphins or the Raiders, decided to come back to the Raiders because we were willing to pay him a little bit more. But I'm not kidding you. Like I thought that he was going to go to Miami based off of some of the conversations that I had with some of those guys. But like that could be somebody that you look at next year because Andre's not going to be on this team next season. They're going to give JPJ the center duties because he beats the shit out of people and he just tries to pancake you. He just wants to be a physical dominating presence. But the thing that I love is he was also a high school wrestler. And sometimes when you see like high school wrestlers that are that big playing center, I mean, again, like growing up, you didn't fight a wrestler and you didn't fight with a farmer. Those are the two rules my dad always gave me. And JPJ is one of those guys where, again, he kind of looks like a big teddy bear, kind of like Brock Bowers. Like if you looked at him, like you're like, who the hell is this guy? Yep. And if he gets his hands on you, you're like, oh shit, I'm in trouble.
Yep. No, absolutely. And think about him too, during his time in Oregon, 1 full season at center, and he goes ahead and wins the nation's top center of the year award. Like that right there told me it's like, okay, maybe he doesn't have the world's most experience at the position, but the time they gave him the opportunity to do so, he did it better than anyone in the entire fleet of college football teams. So no, I absolutely love that as well. Mitchell, I want you to finish a sentence for me. The Las Vegas Raiders upset the Miami Dolphins if
Bane shows up at Hard Rock Stadium.
I like this because the next thing I was going to ask, because we're recording this on Friday. This is going to be my final preview and prediction video. So I was going to ask you for a prediction as well. So you can tie that into this, but
I would say
I was looking for.
Honestly, I think the way that the Raiders beat the Miami Dolphins and is if Scott Turner just shows that he's a little bit competent and that he gives Gardner Minshew some confidence, because the only game this season that we've seen Gardner be confident was against the Baltimore Ravens. And it was so weird because it's Gardner Minshew and he kind of turned into like Steph Curry when he just can't miss, kind of like Steph Curry at the Olympics, where you're like, this is unbelievable because the ball comes out of his hand. You're like, it's going up, it's going in. No. That was Gardner Minshew in the fourth quarter against the Ravens, a game where the Raiders are down 13 points with 10 minutes to go. And it was like every ball Gardner was throwing was perfect spot, couldn't miss. You're like, this might be incredible. And Minshew's just that guy where you can see he's like a kid to me. Like he literally looks like a little kid where when he's confident, he's going out there doing his thing. When he's not, you're like, this is the worst quarterback. Can I get Brian Hoyer and Jimmy Garoppolo back? Like it's that bad. But if Gardner can show confidence, then to me, there's at least a chance. But it's Bane. I think Bane's a little bit more likely.
I like it. That's actually the perfect answer. I didn't want anything too realistic to be said, especially from someone that's a Raiders fan. Mitchell, I'm gonna go. So like I said, I always put a stamp on my final score prediction each week. Fans that are watching this, whether you're a Dolphins fan or a Raiders fan, drop your final score predictions. How do you see this game going in the comments as well? I've been asking very politely for a while, and I'm about to change my attitude pretty soon here, but I want the Miami Dolphins to finally score 30 points in a game. We went from basically averaging that nearly last year, having the NFL's top-ranked offense. There were times where we made scoring look easy. There were certain games where it's like you're not even punting. Maybe you're punting once or twice, but you're scoring on like 80% of your drives.
Sure.
Can I see that once? Can we get 30 points one time? So I do think this is the week. I've said it 3 weeks in a row, so take that for what it's worth. But I think I'm going to go Miami Dolphins 30, Las Vegas Raiders 17. I've got the Miami Dolphins winning this game a little bit comfortably, covering that 7-point spread that we saw going on the scroll. Same ballpark for you. If you're going to put your stamp on something, if you want to save it for one of your own videos, that's cool as well. Your call.
No, so I don't really put out score predictions. I actually don't even do previews anymore because nobody gives a shit about the Raiders games anymore. The only way that I do score predictions, and for anybody out there that watches this show, the company that we work for, it's called Chat Sports. We have a Dolphins channel as well. If you guys want to go check it out, our guy Nick Roloff does a good job over there. Hell, I used to make Dolphins videos about 5 years ago before the company grew a little bit. But we have a deal with Amazon. So if anybody has like an Echo device, like if you go, hey, Alexa, play the Raiders 2-minute drill, or hey, Alexa, play the Raiders blitz, like you'll see me. I talk about the Raiders, and our Dolphins guy, he'll do the same. My prediction that I gave, though, and that one was 24-13, Dolphins win. And it's just one of those things where until I see the Raiders show competence on offense, it's going to be kind of hard for me to, buy into it a little bit. And then even for Miami, like, watching them on Monday Night Football up against the Rams. And the Rams are, they're a tough team. There's no doubt about it. But then they have so many crinkles where it kind of reminded me of watching the Raiders, where the Dolphins come out that first drive, they go right down the field. I mean, it was right down the field. And you're like, oh, shit, like we might see this Dolphins team back again. And then, couldn't really figure it out. Tua, I don't know what he's doing, just running into people. He scares the hell out of me.
Rough. And then he's trying to make a tackle, leading with his head. It's like, dude, if you
what are you doing?
Another interception, lay down and get off the field. I don't care.
Sir, as soon as Tua throws an interception, he should legitimately fetal position. Like, how they used to teach you with like in school, get under a desk in case of a bomb. Yeah. That little desk is going to save you from that tornado or the bomb dropping. But that's what they should teach Tua to do. If he throws a pick, it just immediately just fall down. Get out of the way.
Yep. I'll concede 6 points to see you play next week. Let's put it that way. No.
Christ. Yeah, but I mean, I'll say there is a chance where the Raiders could give up a lot of points, and it really comes down to what they look like in that third quarter. And I say that because every single week, it's the third quarter's been the week that's kind of killed the Raiders, and it's because they don't have any confidence in their offense. And you can see the defense is like, all right, man, here we go again. Right? Like, we got to figure it out. But if Miami connects on one or two deep balls that turn into quick touchdowns, you'll get 30. But the Raiders this season have not given up many big plays. They haven't given up many balls down the field outside of the game they just had this past week against Cincy, who's got a lot of talented receivers, a lot of talented playmakers. And then also Denver ripped them up.
Yeah, interesting. No, it's been weird. I mean, I remember watching that Raiders-Ravens game and being like, wow, what? This is that Raiders team where they're going to lose a game that you don't expect them to, and then they're going to go ahead and beat probably one of the best teams in the AFC. Yep. So you started on the roller coaster, and you've got a little bit of sense of normalcy now with I don't want to call it normalcy, but at least it's like one consistent thing. It's like that's just kind of how our season is going. Mitch, I'll get you out on this one. We are recording this on Friday. There's a chance I don't release it till Saturday, so the audience may already know whether you were wrong or right. Friday night, Jake Paul, Mike Tyson. Who you going with?
I mean, anybody that wants Jake Paul to win, you should be put on a list. Let's just be honest.
Cheers.
Like, don't get me wrong. And this might come off as weird because I do consider myself a YouTuber, and I do consider myself somebody who's been able to, create a life for himself on this platform. And I respect what Jake Paul is able to do, because you can hate the guy all you want. He's probably one of the greatest marketing people of all time, because villains sell, and villains will always sell. But like, I want to see a 58-year-old Mike Tyson absolutely knock him out. And honestly, I hope he bites his ear off. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I'm hoping for in this matchup. Which
Well,
it's for me, like I live in Dallas, so this fight's here. Like
yeah.
when I tell you how big this fight is in this area right now, I mean, it's like I was just looking at tickets. One of our sponsors is Game Time. Shout out to them.
Oh, yeah.
And I was looking at ticket prices at AT&T, and I was like, I'm not.
Never
Like, I
mind.
don't know if you've ever been to a boxing match before. I've only been to one, and I realized I was like, if I'm going to go to a boxing match, I'm going to pay money so you can actually see what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
Instead of, I'm at, like, you go to a football game inside of AT&T Stadium, you get a nosebleed seat, and you're like, oh, wow, this is kind of tough to see.
Right.
Now, imagine watching an event only in, like, the Star. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like, you're like, I
people,
think Jake Paul just hit him. Oh, wait, that's Tyson. I can't tell.
Tyson, yeah.
Right. And
that's fantastic.
but we're tonight, me and a few of my friends, I'm going out with my fiance Alex. We're gonna just go grab dinner at 5. And then there's a lot of places here doing like watch parties and stuff like that. So we're gonna go watch it. But I'm gonna go with Tyson. Like, I mean, even if I believe Paul's actually the favorite.
He's a big favorite. Yeah.
Yeah, which, and if I like look at normal like UFC, MMA stuff, like I'm really excited for the John Jones fight tomorrow. Hell, I'm kind of hoping Chandler Jones is there as well. That'll be something to watch. But like, I always usually bet on the favorite. I don't know enough about mixed martial arts, boxing.
Right.
I was like, I always go with the favorite. I'm not going with the favorite here. I mean, you just can't do it. If the Raiders can beat the Chiefs on Christmas, Mike Tyson can knock out Jake Paul. Tell me why.
I don't know what human being is crazy enough to get into a ring with Mike Tyson, and I don't care what age he's at. And I'm with you. I mean, being at the age that we're at, I know I'm a little bit older than you, but I caught like some of like, I remember like when Tyson bit Evander Holyfield's ear, I was in like middle school. So you'd have been even younger than that. So we didn't get to see like Tyson in his prime, but we've seen enough highlights. We know enough that you don't mess with this guy that could literally kill you with one swing to the head. And I know Jake Paul, like you said, brilliant marketer. He's done very, very, very.
He's
well
a good, like he's a good boxer.
He's a good fighter.
Like,
yeah,
he's a good boxer.
Absolutely. Yeah. But at the same time, I don't care how good you are. You don't step in the box into the ring with Mike Tyson. So I'm excited to watch. I guess I'm cheering for Tyson. Part of me thinks that they're going to try to, like, I don't want to say it's staged, but like part of me is thinking like they're going to have Tyson win, and then they're going to hype up this rematch, and then they're going to have Paul win, and then they're going to just try to get this trilogy so they can get 3 matches out of this. But
I mean, I think it'll be one of those, like, I was actually just having this conversation with one of my buddies the other day. And if I was Jake Paul, okay, if I was Jake Paul, or even honestly, if I was even like, I guess Tyson in this regard, I would figure out a way to get some of these like OG boxers back into the ring a little bit. And, there's probably a doctor watching this show right now going like, that's the worst idea I've ever heard in my life. But at the same time, like, it is an entertainment. And like Tyson might make more money from this fight than he did in, a lot of the fights that he did early on in his career. Like, this is going to be a must-watch event. And I think for anybody that is a competitor, and if you're 58 and you feel that you're still like good enough, like, I bet you right now, if you told Michael Jordan, right, like, hey MJ, like if I'm a YouTuber, right, if I said, hey MJ, I want to play in a basketball game, he's going to be licking his chops to do it, and he would wipe the floor with me, even at however old he is.
Right.
Like, he might have a cigar in his mouth the whole time doing it, dialysis coming out the wazoo, but he's still going to whoop me.
With his red ass eyes. No, I think Tyson, and don't quote me on this, but I think Tyson is guaranteed like 20 million just for showing up and doing this event. And like you said, inflation, the money is different back in the 80s, early 90s when he was really in his heyday. So yeah, he's probably going to make more money on this almost as just like a celebrity thing than he did when he was serious as like earning the belt.
There's a lot of rumors and speculation around like if Paul's even allowed to get knocked out. Like, that's been something that has been talked about. And I'm not going to try to sit up here and say like I know certain things and I don't know certain things, but one of Alex's like really good friends, she used to date Jake. Like, they were together probably about 6-7 years ago before he turned into like Jake Paul, who he is now.
Yep.
And I mean, she used to like tell us all the time, like, oh yeah, none of it's real. Like, you can't, like, it's all staged. And I'm like,
It feels
well,
that
I
way,
don't,
man. You
man, I
don't
don't know
want
how it's
to. You don't want
staged.
it to, but
And, it's one of those things where, but I mean, I was told that in his very first fight, the very first one that he did, it was in the contract that he was not allowed to get knocked out. I believe maybe not the first one, maybe it was the Mayweather fight, but there was
okay.
one where it was like the rules were neither person's allowed to knock either person out. And
Yeah.
I'm like,
Gosh, that's
I'm
not
like, that's lame. I mean,
boxing.
here's the thing, though.
Yeah.
I think even if you told Tyson that, he's going to smell blood like a shark, and he's
Yeah.
just going to come out
That's the one thing
swinging.
I keep kind of hanging my hat on. It's like, okay, how staged can it be? Because a guy that's as crazy as Mike Tyson, that probably it has that will to never fail like Mike Tyson, you're going to tell him to take a fall or to not hit the shit out of somebody. That's where I keep saying, you're like, yeah, for 20 million, maybe he will follow the rules. But if there's
Then
someone
there's
that's
also,
not going to follow the rules, it's Tyson.
but I think then there's also just that, like for me, when I think of the biggest stage I ever played on, right? Like, and not even a big stage, right? Like, but I can remember some of the big baseball games that I played in growing up. If you told me like 30 years down the road that I could play in another game in front of the entire world,
Yeah.
I don't care who you are, you're going to try to give it everything you got.
Yeah.
And for Tyson, I don't know how long he's been out of the ring for, right? But he's going to be in front of AT&T Stadium, and it looks like it's going to be a packed house. I don't know what the biggest crowd that he's ever fought in front of is. That's got to be one of the biggest crowds he's ever fought in
Yeah.
front of the most eyeballs that have probably ever watched a live Tyson fight.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not kidding you. I mean, you can say all you want. That would fire you up. The chills that you would get from that. I mean, yeah, I've always said the one thing that I would love to be able to experience is like, coming out of a tunnel, like at a college football professional game,
Yeah.
like coming out of a tunnel there and like you're the guy, like everyone's like hyping up.
The guy. Yeah.
Or you're walking out and your fight song's on and you're walking out to the ring. Yeah, I'm getting chills just now thinking about it. I mean, that's got to be an unbelievable feeling. And I think Tyson's just going to black out, kind of like my dog Chuck, where he listens 99% of the time. You put a ball in front of him and he's like, I don't hear anything what you're saying. I'm going to try to kill that ball.
100%. Mitch, I think next year I don't remember which division that we're playing and all that stuff, but if the Dolphins and Raiders don't play next year, I think me and you are just going to collab on like one like boxing or UFC podcast and just we'll got to keep the tradition going.
I'm down. I mean, I genuinely mean this. Like, this is probably this might be the first podcast I've done all year outside of work. But I mean, for those that don't know, Ben and I, we go way back to the Loaded Box podcast days. I mean, shit, I think I did more podcasts with you than probably anybody ever. So like anytime that you invite me here, like I'm good. I got nothing really going on today. I mean, I don't have anything planned for another like hour or so. So honestly, we could chop it up. If you got stuff to do, believe me, I get it. But anytime, man, believe me.
I did hear a kid upstairs, so my wife's probably going to want me to get up there at some point. But
I got you.
And same thing to you, man. I appreciate your time as always. Like you said, going back to our fantasy football days, which by the way is really hard these days. Now that I focus more so on there's that kid. Now that I focus more so my attention on the Dolphins. I mean, I'm always giving the Dolphins the biggest percentage of my attention, but like. That takes away now as I'm doing only Dolphin stuff. It takes away from like my ability to do as much with fantasy. And I really learned how if you want to be really good at fantasy, it's hard to be a part-time just like fantasy owner. So that's something that I've kind of conceded a little bit. But you know what? It's great because I've gotten to really just do what I really, really, really enjoy doing, and that's the Miami Dolphins. And obviously, you get to do that with the Raiders now as well. So win-win for everybody.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I miss the fantasy community at times. Don't get me wrong. Like I miss talking like fantasy football all the time, and you could this and that. But I'm very blessed to be able to cover the Raiders. I love being able to cover the team because of the fans. Where even in a year that's super shitty, I know this. When I go out to Vegas, when I go out to California, people would give me the shirt off their back, and I think like that's the cool part about the nation. And I've never tailgated down there in Hard Rock, but I would imagine that it's probably very similar. So
nice. Yeah, I'll be going to the Thanksgiving night game in Lambeau against the Packers.
Okay.
So I'm looking forward to.
You're gonna go DJ?
For those of you that don't know, that's the guy that I used to do fantasy football content with, and he is a huge Green Bay Packers fan. Actually, I'm not going with him. I'm going with my wife, who terribly enough, is a Green Bay Packers fan as well. So it's essentially the same thing. But I'm looking forward to kind of doing the same thing, doing some tailgating and meeting up with some people that have been able to experience the show and share Dolphins memories and thoughts with. So I'm looking forward to doing that while in Wisconsin, which is something that's a little bit of a rarity. Mitchell,
I mean, I'll have to hit up DJ. I haven't talked to him in a minute. So as soon as you said Packers, I was like, oh, you're definitely going up to see him. He's a wild card. I miss him. Tell him I said hi.
You got to give him a little bit of shit, no doubt.
No,
we should we'll wrap it here. But like I said, Dolphins fans, by all means, drop your thoughts, drop your final score predictions in the comments. By all means, I know Mitchell does a lot of stuff, obviously, with the Raiders, but he's a good follow on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it these days. Check him out. Check out his YouTube channel as well. He puts out good content essentially on a daily basis. I know last time we talked, you said you put out a video like every single day for how many days? Is your streak still alive?
Yeah, it's I've had a video go out on the YouTube channel every day. We're getting close to 5 years now. It's kind of crazy.
That is wild. That is dedication, and that is like, if I had a hat down here, I take my hat off to you here. Hats off. I think
it's one of those. It's one of those things where, like you can go listen to anybody, right? There's so many people that do shows, so many people that do podcasts. I'm not the smartest guy out there. I'm not an analytics guy. I think people just tune into the show because at the end of the day, like you want to know like that you can rely on somebody, and you're going to get a video from me every day. We're going to get crazy. We're going to have some beers. We're going to do a lot of that kind of stuff as well. But, also like we're going to give you the content that I think people want, breaking news, opinionated based stuff. But if you're not doing anything on Sunday and you're trying to get a little bit wet and wild, I go live an hour before kickoff, and we'll be live, and there'll probably be 100,000 people there watching and hooting and hollering. So Maybe not as loud as your kid, but we'll have a good time.
No, it's all good. Nap time must be over. So we will wrap it right there, Mitchell. As always, like I said, thank you very much. Hold on for a second so I can give you a proper goodbye. But we'll wrap it there for today. Everybody, Dolphins fans, Raiders fans, I'll include you as well. But until next time, fins up.